Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Whatever time it is, we're pleased you're here. I'm the Reverend Cheryl Butler, and this is Journey Road Ministries, where we seek to do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with our God. So today is November 8th, the 32nd Sunday in Ordinary Time. And as I've said before, this doesn't seem like very ordinary time with the many things going on with the pandemic, and this is Sunday after the major election. So thankfully that it's coming to a close. It looks like we're going to have a new administration, but sadly I think we still have the same really big problem in that we're a very divided country, we seem to be very polarized. And one interesting thing, if you look at any of the exit polls where they ask questions like, is racism a major problem? You had Biden supporters answered yes, a majority yes. And those who voted for Mr. Trump said it wasn't. Large percentage said no. And the question about the pandemic, whether it's a major concern, again, a large percentage of Biden voters said yes, and a large percentage of Trump voters said no. It's very extreme. And so the challenge, it's a challenge for the new administration on how to address these things, even though Mr. Biden talked about being president for all, which is also what Mr. Trump said at his acceptance speech. So only time will tell on that. I just know it's certainly not going to be an easy task to do. One of the reasons we are a very diverse nation, and I think our diversity is one of our strengths. And on the other hand, our diversity is one of our challenges. We have such different worldviews, and I would just hope that we, and for myself, to try to understand people's different worldviews, and to do that we have to listen. So I would encourage you to try to listen to what others say. I mean, it's really a very easy thing to judge, and we like to say, well, how can you be Christian if you believe that, or if you supported that person? Well, I think we have to remember it's really not ours to judge. As Christians, it's ours to love, that we are called to love. And we each need to examine our own hearts and our own actions. And so what I would suggest, there are things we can do to try to not contribute to the problem, to not pass on misinformation, to verify things. And there are resources where you can check things out, and if something you post is unkind, then don't do it. It's here in Journey Road. We seek justice, but we also want kindness and to do things with some humility. And so it really comes down to our own personal choices. I can't do anything about what anyone else does, but I have a choice in how I respond to the world. And to try to remember that I'm not in charge, that God is, and to have the hope, that that idea that the long arc of justice, of history bends towards justice. So during these, next, this time of transition, just try to remember that as Christians we are called to love, and what does that mean? I'm pretty sure it doesn't mean to say or write hateful things to people you disagree with. So let's try to practice some kindness in all that we do. Now, I didn't mean to, I'm not doing the sermon today, but I just feel I had to share what's in my heart today about these events going on, because it is going to be challenging this next year, and we will pray for our leaders. They have no easy task ahead of them between the troubling problems with the economy and this pandemic. So let's be kind to one another. And one thing I'd like to do, which I've been doing each week, is reading a psalm. And the psalm this week is Psalm 79. In the lectionary, it's, I think, just the first 7 verses. But I think this is a very timely psalm, which I've been reading from Psalms for Praying, which is by Nan Merrill. It's an interpreted version. So I'm just going to read and just kind of listen to these words and how they speak to us today. O merciful presence, the ignorant seem unrestrained in the world. They defile the holy temple, your dwelling place within. They leave those weaker than themselves in ruins. Chaos and destruction follow them as they oppress the poor through deception and greed, and kill the faith-filled who resist. Yes, they have poured out their blood like water throughout the world. Many have disappeared without a trace. How long will the unjust bring anguish to the loving, to those who seek justice and peace? How long, O indwelling presence, will your patience last forever? When will you awaken our long dormant spirits? Pour out your love on every nation. Open the hearts of all people. We await a new birth of consciousness. We call upon your name. For the ignorant and unloving are laying waste to the planet. Forgive us for the misuse and abuse of your creation. Humble us with your steadfast love before the world becomes a barren waste. Help us, O compassionate one, to renew the face of the earth. Deliver us and forgive our sins, that we might know the joy of co-creation. Let other nations not cry out, where is their faith? Let all who have spilled the blood of the innocent repent and make reparations before the eyes of the world. Let the cries of the victims of injustice come before you, according to your great power. Break the bonds of oppression. Let all that has been garnered through greed be returned in full measure with open hands. Then we, your people, those who would companion with you, will give thanks to you forever, from generation to generation. We will abandon ourselves into your hands with grace-filled, open hearts. Amen. And today we have the Reverend Mary Dyer, who is going to share her message about waiting, waiting, waiting.
I named this homily, Waiting, Waiting, Waiting. I actually wrote it during this week as we are waiting for the results, and we're both very euphoric right now because they just came in, but there's more to waiting than just waiting for that election. What week this has been. What a year this has been. COVID's cases topping well over 100,000 a day with no end in sight. No leadership. False information flung out to be believed and practiced by so many. Wearing or not wearing masks is no longer a health issue, it's a political issue, right down the middle, with people supporting Trump failing to wear the masks and actually gloating in that, and the others being thoughtful of their neighbors and of themselves wearing the masks. Even when he got COVID, he emerged from that no wiser, still going around unmasked, still putting his people into unnecessary danger. There are millions more applying for unemployment virtually every day. Many are being evicted. No federal monies paid out after the initial payment. This is one year I want to see over as fast as possible. Tuesday night, I thought it would be decided who would lead the country out of this quagmire of confusion and division and economic turmoil. I was ready to be done with the ongoing anxiety. 4 years ago, Cheryl and I kept watching. Both of us wound up like an overwound clock, and yet the hours kept slowly ticking away, minute by minute. Nothing was decided when both of us finally yielded to sleep, hoping it would be resolved by Wednesday morning. And yet, as I wrote this Friday evening before the declared victory, the suspense kept on, like a very big sundial reluctantly releasing sand, one begrudging particle at a time. So I found the parable of the 10 bridesmaids both challenging and hopeful at the same time. As we are still in the midst of the waiting time, even after the election results came in, we have a long way to go to get back to a new normal. So there are 2 points that especially attracted me about the 10 bridesmaids, and I want to expand a little on them. The first is that only 5 of the 10 had their lamps ready to be lit, wherever and whenever the bridegroom came. The other 5, for some strange reason, actually showed up without the oil they needed to light the lamps. It sort of reminds me of when Cheryl and I were moving from Berkeley to Iowa in the fall of 2009, when the loaders of the container arrived to put our belongings from the house into the van itself, and they didn't have any dollies. Let me repeat that. The movers came without any dollies to move very heavy furniture. They did not have what their job actually required. So I had to go up to the campus to borrow a dolly from the campus for them to use for their job to load up our furniture. They weren't ready. And the second is the uncertainty of the time when the bridegroom might arrive. There were no text messages or internet or cell phones, so their waiting was probably even more stressful than our own, where instant communication is the norm. All of them could go to sleep, but they all needed to be ready to accompany the bridegroom whenever he showed up. They merely had to light their already filled lamps and get up. There would be no time for the 5 who were unprepared to rush out and buy lamp oil, so they were understandably left behind. It led me to think of situations in my own life where I had to wait an undetermined amount of time for something to happen. As Cheryl would say about this, she is patient, but I am just persistent. I think of patience as something granted to others, but left out of my own DNA. The first instance was when my third child was born. She was due on December 15th, and the monks at the nearby Trappist Abbey wanted my newborn child to grace their manger for the Christmas Eve services. So they waited, and I waited, and then we all waited some more. I grew larger and larger, and even offered to sit in the manger as the pregnant Mary, but they declined my generous offer. Finally, on January 3rd, almost 3 weeks after her due date, Meg decided to be born, weighing in at a hefty 10 pounds and 10 ounces. The second waiting period was when I became deaf suddenly after routine knee surgery over 12 years ago. No one could tell me why. No one knew what to do to return my hearing to me, or even if it was possible. Without any external sound, my brain got bored and tinnitus set in. In my case, one ear sounded like I was under a freeway underpass, noise clanging, the whole bit, with traffic making a lot of cacophonous noise. Not very relaxing, especially since I could not turn it off during my waking hours. The other ear decided to replay an exact replication, a beautiful musical rendition of My Father's World. No words, just the soothing music, over and over and over and over again, for days, for weeks. I just looked up the lyrics, which I was not really familiar with, other than "This is my Father's world," as I was working on the homily. So listen with me to the music and the words now.
This is my Father's world, and to my listening ears, all nature sings, and round me rings the music of the spheres. This is my Father's world. The birds their carols raise, the morning light, the lily white, declare their Maker's praise. This is my Father's world. I rest me in the thought of rocks and trees, of skies and seas. His
when I read the words yesterday as I was finishing up, my listening ears had departed. I could not hear nature singing. The birds could not sing in my silent world. The rustling grass was a distant memory. My battle was not yet done, and it was my choice to choose fear or hope, to yield to the fear or the hope of recovery. As I lay in my hospital bed after surgery, actually with an attendant sitting next to my bedside, since I had been evaluated as suicidal, I kept wondering if I would hear again. And so I could look outside the window as I am now and see the birds and the trees, but I couldn't hear them singing. It inspired me from my bed of hope and fear to write this poem while I was still in the hospital. It's called "The Birds Are Singing Somewhere." Each morning I awake, I lie expectant in the darkness, hoping against hope. The birds whose cheerful trills rise up on the bright, crisp morning air to greet the dawn outside my window are real, and not just a sad mixture of memory and hope, served up to me before breakfast. A daily dreary dose of spiritual discipline, bran flakes for the soul. And if this is yet to be yet another day, imposed or given in silence, can I lift it up with the song of my heart? I simply had to wait it out for over half a year before I got my cochlear implant. I did not know if it would work or what kind of hearing I would get from it. Certainly nothing as good as what I had known so recently as natural hearing. When I finally had surgery and waited the requisite 2 weeks for my ear to heal and went in to have the sound processor activated, I had to wait yet another 2 weeks because I had a hematoma. It was a long drive back with me in the passenger seat looking out over the San Francisco Bay and just wanting to give up. I was tired of waiting. But I finally got my processor activated and my journey back into the hearing world as a visitor had begun. I'm sure that each of you can look at your own life and recall times you had to wait for someone to be born, for someone to die, for a new job, for a situation you might not have known how to get out of. Yet now, as a community bathed in faith, it is time to decide again how we wait. It's tempting, especially now, to just shut our eyes and hope we can forget for the moment the many tribulations that are pressing upon us. It's tempting, if we get a new chance to become what this country was meant to be, that it can be. It will just take time and patience and persistence. I expect no matter the good result of the election, we are all tired, understandably so. But as we wait, even now that the election has been declared, we're waiting for the Senate to be finalized, for COVID to come under some sort of control, for the economy to improve, for hopefully the relief we get to feel on January 20th, on the inauguration day. There is so much work to be done still to move forward. So take a breath, then another, and another. We can wait, sleeping when we can, knowing, however, that we will be ready with our lamps to move into the darkness with our own lights and hope to those who have none. I would like to end by our listening to my favorite song. Deep Peace by Donovan. Just sink into the music and let its peace roll over you.